Well, good evening, folks. This is Lila again with some bedtime stories that I would really like to share with you. With me this evening is Dean Val and our dear friend Tim von Pinnon. I'll be reading from Book 6, Your Dream Visions by Dwayne, the Great Writer. And we'll discuss the chapters as we go along. This is going to be a very exciting and informative evening. Just stay tuned. There have been so many in human history who have tried to provide a real benefit to mankind. Yet the power mongers have always suppressed the most vital of information, so as to keep people slaves to those with the ball and chain psychism. Each and every person has a right to discover their own true ability and genuine value, which is who they really are, because the masses have been taught to look to others. They feel so insecure to finally have the right and real information to figure out their own lives for themselves. I see that everyone is unique, even those dolts who ploy others with their sophistication of worthless values. Those who have built monuments to themselves are usually the ones who are the most notorious, and are at some point in history always found out. An example is President Roosevelt, who very well knew the Japanese were going to bomb Pearl Harbor prior to World War II. It was all a ploy to get into the war, and American lives meant nothing. Yet these historical figures are praised for what they have done. I could go through history like you wouldn't believe, but that will be another book. For those who are sincere and want to know real truth, they will be shown the universal files of the new League of the Real Universal Guides. Certain unique individuals in the past tried to create a bridge between the dream arena and the civilizations of the time. In the past, many of the kings, queens, and emperors listened to those who knew the secrets of the dream realms. There was no real scientific technology then, only a more simplified lifestyle. The medical field was very different, and so people looked to those means which were more natural and made sense. Today, society is of the privileged, and to make sense of one's own experiences, unless officially authorized by a diplomatic personage, does not seem to make sense of one's own experiences, which are with them all the time. The old guests, such as searching for the Holy Grail, the Da Vinci Code, and many others like it, are more along the lines of educated scholars who know nothing about the real adventures of life, nor the real secrets of the all-is. The unaware public is always mystified by the acrobatics of the overeducated literalists and their consent bombarded of way too many ideas that do not relate to reality at all. These are the same people who created the legal system, which was invented for the person as a takeover and to outsmart the common person. The real guides are real beings, and they do not associate with those who waste their lives on phenomena and artificial official agreement. Most children have more sense than do overeducated adults. Children themselves see within themselves the wonder of their experiences and what most grown-ups have lost. The average adult trains their children to be smart and not more aware. So what they are really doing is modeling their offspring after them and to follow in the footsteps of their own demise. A good life is no life at all if one cannot risk exploring who they really are. The information that is found with the 6 o'clock news and the rep systems will never reveal real truth, as they are both hypnotically and politically controlled. In the Christian Bible, which is a professionally edited collection of other people's supposed experiences, we have ancient Jacob and his adventure of ascending into the heavens by the means of a ladder. I am sure that Mr. Jacob was a good fellow and really did have this experience, because I have had many myself along the same lines. His steps or ladders led up to the astral world, and mine go directly to the is. I have seen the universal files and many of the proposed ancient stories and the experiences of those from human history, and some are close to being true, but there are those that have been creatively mastered to really sound good. My interest does not lie in the fact of being a detective and finding out what others have decided to be their truths, but one of providing a real service with a real education. I suggest that each person test what I am presenting, and when they start having real experiences in their dream visions, they'll know for themselves that human history is a lot of interesting stuff. And so, what do you guys want to remark on that?
Yeah, thanks, Lila. Hi, Tim. It's interesting because I just ran into something very interesting. It's the Tartarian Empire, and this is something I had never heard before until like a few weeks ago. And this is just an example of what Dwayne's talking about, that history has been rewritten and edited and managed so that for certain purposes of control, basically for mind control and the way they want you to see things. But this Tartarian Empire supposedly even goes back even at least a couple hundred years ago, and maybe even into the mid-1800s, where this empire that stretched from Siberia throughout the United States, the majority of the world. I mean, it was a huge landmass, supposedly, where these giants, they're 8 to 12 feet tall. They had a pretty good take on the environment. They work with the environment. They built all these cathedrals and structures that we see in Europe and in the United States. These like the Sears building, these cathedrals in Europe and all that, and they were basically taken over by the Romanovs, and when they came in, these are like late 1800s, they started rewriting the history. So what we read, supposedly even primary sources have been rewritten according to this information. And as an example, in Russia, they wanted to get rid of this information, so they started a department of a team of people that would go out into Russia and destroy any artifacts in any museums, any people that had any personal belongings that would lead back to this Tartarian Empire. They even got rid of people sometimes if they were like maybe older and had stories to tell about it. I mean, they did a very thorough job in destroying any kind of leads or evidence that would make it true. And we even see nowadays, like, I've seen pictures and photos of 8-foot people, 10-foot, 11, these giants. Those are Tartarians. They're left over from that era. Now, I don't know too much about it, but it seems like I am into history, so I'm going to investigate it a little bit more. But the idea is here, the example is that we don't know what, I mean, we're taking for granted what we read in the history books and what the so-called authorities have come up with in terms of like evidence, so-called primary sources, documents. Unless we ourselves have investigated it, we're taking this on somebody's word for it. And as we've seen in the past, the authorities, they usually have an agenda. There's usually some kind of a conspiracy going on. So this, and then there's another documentary we were watching the other night about Hidden Colors, I think it was. It's on Netflix, where it talks about how the blacks had a huge influence in the past too, and the whites have erased their influence as well. The influence on math and education and astronomy. I mean, they had a huge, and a lot of them were rulers in Europe, like kings and such. But they either, again, they rewrote history. They can even go as far as like paintings and old scriptures, and they would rewrite those or repaint them or do something, to edit it so it looked the way they wanted it to look. So I'm just in awe about how history is just. The more I become more aware, the more I see that it's not what we're told. Another one is the flat Earth theory, which is whatever, but the Earth. There's a lot of evidence that the Earth is flat, and there's a surrounding story about an explanation how that works too, with how we relate to the stars and the moon, and Antarctica fits in there, and with the aliens and all that, and it's this reality is so. If you really investigate it, there's a lot of narratives about how it is. But the main thing is what we're sharing here is just become more aware. I mean, that stuff doesn't matter as much, but just as a comparison. But the main thing is become more aware and go through all that to see what really is, because the history changes, or whether it's true or not. It doesn't matter in a way. You can reference it, but becoming more aware, that's the key here.
Well, that's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to really dig in order to find out that other awareness, that other proof that they're here. Obviously, those 8-foot people, 10-foot people aren't here, but they sure left an impression.
Mm-hmm.
Of what they are, and where are those people now?
Well, like I say, there's evidence of archaeological digs that have found bones that represent people that were that big, but they're not necessarily. The media doesn't cover that, or it's not shown to the public. Certain things aren't told to the public. What they do find, and then, like I say, there's photographs of people, especially in Asia. These tall people that right now they're like 8 to 12 feet tall. But like I don't know enough about it to really discuss it. But it sounds like there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of just like the flat Earth theory, just like maybe anything that people investigate, they can come up with something that proves their point. But it's interesting that they call it revisionist history now, where you go back and you question what has been told to you, and it may not be so. So it's a wide open field right now.
But I think that, to make our lives more interesting, rather than just a humdrum 9 to 5, gee, here's a whole new worlds out there, whole new things. What an adventure this could be. It is an adventure. And so much of it we have to depend upon the guides to guide us and show us where we can get this information. Because it sure isn't in the public books. No way. So on the inner, I guess you get it from the guides. They lead you to these. How did you get that information?
Yeah, maybe Tim knows. Tim has a comment on that.
Tim, do you know?
Well, I'm not sure if I know how the real guides present things to us, but it does sound like all the deception is showing up. It is amazing how the masses have been taught the fake history and things, like Dwayne was mentioning about Roosevelt and how he knew that Pearl Harbor was going to get bombed, and how people think he was a great president, and it's just more of this reptilian brutalitarian stuff. They don't care at all about human life. It's just nothing that matters to them about anybody, it seems like, other than themselves, and how great they are, and how others are not equal or the same. It is amazing how all of this stuff has taken place that we experience, and the masses, and it's like the news stuff, even this new presentation. It doesn't seem like it will have the opportunity to be on the TV or the radio or these news agencies about things that are real, what's true, and why we came here, and the to let people know about tests for themselves, what Dwayne's presenting in the new books, and test the new you song, and let life show you what it does.